So I'm going to tell you my story. Some of you already heard part of this story before, and if you want to go get coffee, that's fine, but some of it's going to be new to you and stuff like that. So just tune in and see if God teaches you anything through my story, all right? So this past month in June, Father's Day, was the one-year anniversary since I flew down to Texas, and I went on this men's retreat called Crucible, all right? And I didn't want to go, but I met this missionary friend down in Mexico. His name was James, and he said, hey, Jim, there's this great retreat. You ought to go on a retreat. I'm like, I'll pray about it, but that means I'm not, all right? So, because I'll just let something out of the bag. Whenever a Christian looks at you and goes, I'll pray about it, they mean no, all right? But that sounds mean. So, okay, James, thank you, brother. I'll pray about it. I'm out, all right? But anyway, but I was going through some stuff in my life at that point, all right? Well, I still am. But anyway, it's personal, private, embarrassing stuff in my life. And it's just embarrassing, all right? And my wife knew mostly about it, but you know, I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor, my grandpa's a pastor, stuff like that. And what was going on in my head and in my heart and in my past, what I was wrestling with in that moment, I'm telling you, if I went public with that, that would get most pastors fired in any church that I've ever attended or been on staff with. And so I said, okay, if I'm going to go, I got online, and I found the retreat furthest from Colorado, and I went to that one. It was in the middle of nowhere, Texas, all right? It's like it's not on the map. It's just like, never mind. All right, so I emailed James and said, hey, James, I'm going to Podunk, Texas. And he says, okay, you need to take somebody with you. I went, no, I'm going to go by myself. He says, you need to take somebody with you. And by the time it was all over, when I got down to Texas, there were 4 of us. All right, so that's called a carpool. But anyway, that's all right. But I was so tired. At that point in my life, I was so tired of carrying around shame and insecurity. And some of you are at that point. Some of you are going to sit here and go, oh, man, I'm sick and tired of it too. Memories in my head that I rehearse every day, every communion service at least, and when all those things that have defined and controlled my life, not for minutes, decades of my life. So I was like, screw it, guys, let's go to Texas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience again, all right? The first rule of Crucible is kind of like Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club. Don't talk about Crucible. You're not, so when you sign up to go to this retreat, you make an agreement. You're not going to talk about what goes on there. Now, let me answer some questions about that, because some of you immediately like, so what goes on there? Let me just tell you, all right? Because I've gotten a lot of questions. It's not a cult. Well, thank you, Pastor Jim. All right, it's not a cult, all right? He said, well, why won't you tell me, all right? And it's not because we do secret stuff and have secret handshakes and kill goats. We don't do anything like that. It's not because we run around the woods naked and touch butts or anything like that. We don't do that. I've been asked all of those questions, all right? So no one's ever touched hardly anyone has ever touched, but anyway, lighten up, take a breath, breathe, all right? Each man that goes on this retreat says, okay, I agree. I'm not going to talk about the details of what goes on there, and I'm not going to tell anybody any other man's story, because it's not my story, it's their story. So we have confidentiality. But the reason we do that is to protect every man that decides to go in the future. Every man who decides to go and say, I want to experience and be given the opportunity that I had. I had a great opportunity. And so it's secretive or whatever, just to protect that. Because I was given a chance to walk through an experience, a journey, a safe place with some really, really strong men with no preconceived notions or defenses all built up. A place where I'd be able to confront whatever it is that's standing in the way of me becoming all that God has for me, becoming the man God wants me to be, the husband I want to be, the father and the leader, to fight through anything that's robbing me of the grace God wants to give me and the grace that I need to give myself. Again, I'm Pastor Jim. I don't attend retreats. I lead them. I teach at them. I just don't sit out there and have people tell me what I should do, all right? Because that's dangerous. It's much safer up here for me to give advice than actually to hear it. I'm just being honest with you, all right? And if they would have told me hey, when you get to Texas, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have gone. Not because it's weird or sinful, but because I'm just telling you, I have a lot at stake. And everybody in this room is saying, I do too. I get it's not a comparison, right? I have a lot at stake, and if I let some of you all know what's going on in here and in here, I'll tell you, I have spent a lifetime managing and engineering what people know and think about me, and I'm pretty good at it. And so risking that, I have everything at stake. But I trusted James and the men that they were going to go with me, and I was just at a point where I was like, hey, screw it, let's go. And so I was desperate, and we all went for our own reasons. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Crucible. I cleared it with them. They told me I could tell you this much, all right? The Crucible Retreat is completely Bible-based around a story found in Genesis 32. There's a story of a man named Jacob, and he wrestles with God. He wrestles with God. That's where we got the title for this series. This is also the story of both our men's retreat and women's retreat in May, and our men's retreat and women's retreat coming up in September. They're all based on this retreat, or on this idea. It's called Royal, how we're kings and queens, we're sons and daughters of God. But the gist of this story is this. There's this guy named Jacob in the Bible, and you can read this on your own later, a man who has lived a life filled with shame and fear and regret, insecurity, lying to everybody, manipulating, stealing, cowardice, blaming other people for all his problems, hiding behind the women in his life. first his mom and then his wife, all right? He puts them all at risk. He's confronted by God. He's down by a river one day and he's confronted by God. And he doesn't know it's God, but the two of them fight. They wrestle all night long. And finally, the Lord says to him, hey, Jacob, let go of me and give up. And Jacob says, I'm not letting go of you. I will not let go of you, because Jacob has come to a place in his life where he's like, enough. Some of you, this is where I was, enough. Some of you are at that place in your life, enough. I need something to change in my life. Men and women, and right, you can relate to this. You look in the mirror and go, this can't be my life. I won't let it. This is not going to be the last chapter of my life. God, I need you to do something in me, change me, bless me, kill me here by the river, but I'm not going to let go of you until you do something in me. Let's just think about this. Wrestling with God, fighting with God. Who survives that? I mean, if God is God, he could have looked at Jacob and went, bam, right there, just smashed him right there and went, don't you talk back to me, right? God could have done that because he's God, all right? But he doesn't. He wrestles with us. It's like God knew that Jacob needs to wrestle. He could have just told him the answer. He could have just said, do it this way, and here, read this book and this pamphlet and memorize it. There'll be a test. He could have done that, but he says, no, listen, he knew you need to wrestle through this. You need to fight through this for some really important things in your life if they're ever going to change. And so God, not condescendingly, but graciously wrestles with us. So Jacob and God wrestle all night long, and eventually God does bless Jacob, but in the process, Jacob is wounded. And I believe that's intentional. That wound represents and reminds Jacob of all the events and scars that led him to that point. Because let's be honest, everyone in this room has scars. Broken bones, bruises, memories, things like that. Literally in our minds, whatever that is. Nobody gets through life without scars. Nobody gets out of the house without scars. Nobody gets through life without scars and painful wounds in their life. And God, even though God blesses him and changes his name, this might sound familiar, from Jacob to Israel, and uses Jacob in great ways in the future, from that day on, Jacob walks with a limp for the rest of his life. All right? God blesses him, but there's a reminder. And so the Crucible Retreat was that opportunity for me to wrestle with God, and I did. Right? To put myself into a strong container made up of men who'd already gone through the same thing and wrestled through the same thing, and they were supporting me, the kind of that Me Too kind of experience. It was a chance for me to step into that and say, God, bring the fire, do something in my life, a chance to fight through some really tough memories and events and voices in my life, which for me were memories and events that had left me wounded and limping, living a lifetime of insecurity, of questioning every day, do I ever think I'll be a good man? Do I ever think I'll be a real man, right? A lifetime of every day having to prove, am I enough? Am I enough? It's the number one question that men and women look in the mirror every day. Am I good enough? A lifetime of every day, everything turning into this giant peeing contest. You know what I mean? If you don't understand that, ask your brother, right? Whatever that is, all right? But I mean, every day you go, I'm going to do that. Does that make me strong? I'm going to do that. Now can I look in the mirror and say I'm enough? And nothing worked. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Our biggest fear is we're going to be found out that we're just not good enough. Could God take the thing that I don't want anybody to know about me and change that wound from the dirt and shame that had ruined and wrongly defined my life and turn it into gold that he actually could use something horrible, use it for my good, and maybe help me with some other people? And I shared most of the story last Father's Day when I got back from Texas, right? But I went to Texas and I had a conversation. But my conversation wasn't with God. God and I are fine. God and I are good. What? Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Listen, I'll just tell y'all, okay, in case the day doesn't go well. If I die today, I'm fine. All right? A lot of you you're invited. Come to my funeral, all right? It's going to be a party, all right? So I'm fine with God. My sins are forgiven. I'm covered in his righteousness. I'm fine. I didn't have a conversation with God. God and I are fine. I had a conversation with myself. God forgave me. I wouldn't. But I forgave myself, and I let myself off the mat because I had pinned myself down there and said, you deserve to be down. I looked back at my life, and I saw that when what happened, I didn't know what else to do, so I did the best I could. I wish I'd done it different. But I didn't. That's what I did. I wish I would have been a stronger man back then, but I wasn't. I actually looked at another person in the room, and I wish I was as strong as you. He just shook his head. I wish I was braver, but I wasn't. I was afraid. Did the best I could. Here's the other thing in my aha moment. I can't change my past. I can't. I wish there was some cosmic divine rewind button that you could go back and go, can I get my 20s back? Right? Can I get well, there's more than that, but but I can't change what happened. But here's the aha moment in the last year for me, right? My biggest problem is not what happened to me. Worse things have happened to people. I can tell you what happened to me. I'm not going to, but I can tell you what happened to me, and you say, well, mine's just worse. I bet. I bet it is. This isn't a big comparison, all right? See, my biggest problem was not what happened to me. My biggest problem is that I continue to hold on to it. I allowed it to define me. I had become addicted to thinking about it and blaming somebody else and what happened to me and using that as my excuse for all my problems and failures. So whenever I screwed up and made a big mistake, I would just look back and go, don't blame me. Remember what happened to me? Not my fault. Not my fault. Remember what happened? Blame him, right? I was addicted to my own shame and fear and insecurity. My biggest problem is not a past event in my life that hurt me. And for the record, it hurt a lot. My biggest problem was that I chained myself to it. God didn't chain me to it. I chained myself to it. But here's my dilemma. If I let go of it, that would mean that I would be a free man, and I couldn't use my past as an excuse to blame all my problems on anymore. I would have to man up and take responsibility for my life from now on. And so that's the scariest thing I can imagine. Because sometimes you can wear your past, your guilt, shame, fear, insecurity, you can wear it like a coat and wrap up in it and go, at least I know it's mine. And to take that off and say, I'll take accountability for my own life, that scared me as a scared man. It just scared me to death. So I did something I never thought I would do in front of a room full of men, strong men, Christian men, safe men. 3 words I never thought I'd use in the same sentence. Strong, safe, Christian men. That's 4 words, but go with it, right? I know some strong, mean Christian men. I know some weak Christian men. I don't know many Christian men that are safe and strong. But again, I was desperate, so I laid it all out there. I got in front of a room of men. I went, this is what happened to me years ago. This is what I've done with all that pain over the last several decades. We have a saying at Crucible. It goes like this. You might want to take a picture of the screen or write it down. This is awesome. Big truth, big grace. Little truth, little grace. Isn't that true? And I went big. Words are coming out of my mouth. I'm going, this is going to kill me. This is going to end me. But I went all in, big grace. Big truth, and I received big grace. And just like Jacob on the spot, I knew. It's like God put his hand on me and blessed me and told me, hey, Jim, you're a good man. And actually, I started believing it. I'm the strong one. And the lies in my past and the voices in my head are lies from my past. And they belong in the past. Here's the other part about it, though, okay, is that my biggest fear when I went to this retreat, because, again, I've been raised in the church. I've been to so many retreats, hundreds probably, you know. When I was a baby, my parents drug me off to retreats. I went to camp, vacation Bible school. I went to all those things, all right? And here's my biggest fear. This is going to be one more thing, that I'm going to hear a sad song, I'm going to pray a prayer, hear a sad story, whatever, and then, you know what, I'm going to go, okay, God, I think I'm fixed. And it's going to last for about an hour and a half, and then it's all going to come back again. I'm just done with that. And this one, all right, as of now, 12 and a half months later, it's still helping. It's still working in my life. So people ask me this question, like, you know, so did Crucible change your life? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, in that I hope my life is always changing. I hope this isn't the final product, right? Some of you nodded your heads a little too vigorously there, like, I hope that's not as good as it gets either, right? So I want my life to always be changing. I want to be a better man tomorrow than I was yesterday, right? Crucible is just one of the many dominoes that God knocked over, and I hope it leads to another one and another one and another one and another one. I do. But no, the weekend retreat didn't change me. A weekend retreat can't change anybody. It did give me some language and some tools to use when the voices and fear and shame and insecurity come back. And they always come back, don't they? I mean, last week was a great weekend in here. We had a big cross out there in the middle of the room, all right? And a lot of us nailed some shame and some fear and some death up there. But let's be honest. We started thinking about it before we got back to the car. It always comes back, but now I got some language. I got some tools to kind of, I always describe it as like this anaconda that jumps out and wraps itself around me, and I was doing fine, and then 5 minutes later I can't even breathe, but now I have some voices and some tools to keep it out in front of me, and I can fight off those voices now and send them back to hell where they belong. I also have a few men around me who went through this with me. When they look at me and they go, hey, I'm Me Too, I actually believe them. Just because you buy a Me Too shirt doesn't mean you're a Me Too person. Right? I got to know you've gone through the fire too. If you were ever tempted to ask yourself, looking in the mirror, or somebody else backs you in the corner and asks you the question, what would you change in your past if you could change anything? What would you do different if you got a life do-over? How about this? And this is where I've landed in my wrestling match with God after years and decades of hows and whys and how come, God. Here's where I've landed. This is my landing spot currently. It goes like this. The only way I have faced anything in the past or can face anything in the future is with the absolute certainty, that's called faith, that God was and will be in it with me, will take care of me, and will not waste it, but use it in some way for good. But that doesn't mean I'm glad it happened. I just want you to know that. I'm not But it also means I don't have to sit around and get sucked into that what-if game that never ends well and serves no purpose. It does mean this: I can have peace. I do have peace knowing that whatever has happened in my life or will happen, my fault or somebody else's sin, landing on me, God is enough. And His grace really is sufficient. And I wrestled with God, and I found that I can trust Him. But I was to be really, really honest with you. You won't know that until you wrestle with Him. You won't believe that because some pastor told you that's true. You're going to have to go to the mat. You're going to have to wrestle with God, and you're going to find out you can trust Him.